So today I want to tell you the story of your life. And I think it's the story of your life because it's the story of the human experience in general. And I'm going to tell it as the parable of the salmon, or the parable of the river of being. So imagine that you are a full-grown salmon and you're swimming around in the ocean. You're following the currents and the food sources and the other salmon, and you don't have any particular direction in mind. One day something changes, and you swim into the bay. You swim toward the river where you were spawned, the river that brought you out to the sea. You enter that river, and as you do, you encounter rapids and obstacles. You learn to navigate these rapids, and you grow strong and resilient. You adapt to the change from the fresh water, to the salt water, to the fresh water. And then you make it to a pool. There you can rest for a little while and refresh and catch your breath. So when you're ready, you dive into the white water ahead. This time you're thrown back into the pool. This is surprising. You dive into the white water again. Again, you're thrown back. Finally, you realize you're not at another set of rapids. Now you're at a waterfall. And the only way forward is to learn how to fly, at least for brief intervals. You have to learn to propel yourself airborne above the water. So you do this, you make it up the waterfall, but you're disoriented and you're unstable and you're swept back down into the pool. You might do that a couple of times. And then you look around you in the pool and you realize there's two approaches. There's the salmon who are determined to continue their forward progress. And then there's salmon who are stagnant, who are languishing around the edges of the pool, or they're swimming in circles. You persevere. And you make it up that waterfall, and you swim up the river far enough where you can rest and recharge to continue your journey ahead. So here's what the parable means. The ocean where we started this story is common everyday life. This is where you're just focused on your human senses, the appearances, what can you see, hear, taste, smell. You're following the norms and the beliefs of your family, your society, your culture, and you're not asking a whole lot of questions. But one day, something changes, and you start going in a definite direction. Now for me, when I was 5 years old, my family moved to a suburb on the west side of Houston, a brand new suburb. Every fourth house was alike. It was just like a pattern. And I went to school, I went to dance class, went to gymnastics, played the flute in the school band. And at the time, there was a show on local television called Kitterick. Anybody remember Kitterick? So it was a lady dressed as a cat. It was a children's show. It was a live studio show, and children would go around on this little carousel, and Kitterick would ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it seemed to me that all the boys said they wanted to be firemen, and all the girls wanted to be a nurse. And it felt like a very cookie-cutter existence. It was like a factory, like white kid, white. There was not a lot of diversity in my operating sphere at the time. So eventually you begin to question, like, is this normal? Is there more to this limited existence? So you swim into the bay, and this is a turning point in your life. This is a memorable occasion. Something jolts you out of your routine, and you go towards the river. So you start noticing things you never noticed before. You become aware of your choices. You begin questioning some beliefs, and you discard the ones that no longer fit you. So you've made a conscious decision to go in a direction. So when I was in the 5th grade, we stopped going to the church in the suburbs, and we started driving across town to a church in a much older part of town. There were Friday night services, so one Friday night, I'm sitting in a service with my family. I'm 13 years old, and I felt compelled to go to the prayer chapel after the service. And this is where the chaplains would pray for you and kneel at the altar and, I think they put their hands on your head, get prayed for. And this was a conscious decision that I made. It was a memorable experience, a turning point in my life. So when you swim up the river, You encounter rapids and obstacles, and these are the growth opportunities. These are the books you read, the workshops you take, the teachers you find, the practices you adopt. They may be singular one-time events, or it may be ongoing activities. Some of the rapids are fun, and some are very strenuous. Rapids are, again, all the various ways that we can progress and grow. This is the domain of self-help and personal growth. You might start going to therapy. You might begin practicing yoga. You might join a group or study leadership. There's a myriad of ways to progress. And what you choose is a matter of your personal preference and what options your life presents to you. The water's all from the same source, and we're going to gather at the same destination. So when you get to the pool, hooray for you. You've made a lot of progress. You're strong, you're brave, you're resilient. You might even be a little bit arrogant at this point. There's some potential obstacles. So here's 4 ways that we might get bogged down. 1, overconfidence. You're a fountain of knowledge and experience, but guess what? There's more to learn. 2, sharing your enthusiasm. This is also known as interfering with others. Before, your life was your life was shallow and meaningless, and now you have purpose and direction. That's great. You have insight and wisdom. Fantastic. But it's not effective to try and drag other people along with you on this journey. When they're ready to know what you are doing, they'll ask you. So it's not effective to try to bring people along. As my friend and colleague, Linda Starr says, just keep minding your own internal light. Number 3, a way we get bogged down, judging other people's progress. Some people are content swimming around in the ocean. They don't want to enter the river in this lifetime. Just respect people where they are and keep going. It's not effective to critique other people's journey. And 4, becoming narrow-minded. You don't have to conform to a teacher who says that they know the only way or they know the best way for you. It's good to just continue to be open. Continue to find out what works for your way of being. So on the journey, you've decided to leave the ocean of your everyday existence. You've made it through the river rapids, and you've gained strength and confidence. And your experiences make for an interesting story. This is the testimony of your life so far. And again, maybe you studied with a guru, or you practiced martial arts. Maybe you started a business or created art. Maybe you worked in sales. Anything that leads to awareness, especially self-awareness, will get you to the shared destination. And today we're focusing on the spiritual journey because we're in church, but this also works for any path: science, business, the arts, sports. It's the journey into mastery, into being a master of your chosen field. So how to tell if you're at the base of the waterfall? There's 4 ways. 1, you've hit a wall. You're doing what you've learned to do, but you're getting diminishing results. 2, you're restless. The activities that used to bring you joy just aren't that interesting anymore. 3, you've outgrown the space where you are. You're ready to explore further. And 4, you can distinguish the major lessons that you've learned in life, and you feel complete with those lessons. You've learned and you're ready for more. So when you make it to the base of the waterfall, you have 2 choices. Make it up that waterfall or rot in the pool below. I didn't say this was just a happy story, right? So how do you tell if people are stuck in the pool at the base of the waterfall? They're the cynics. They tend to be bitter and disillusioned. They've read all the books. They've taken all the workshops. Their favorite pastime now is criticizing others, trying to tear them down. They're dissatisfied with life, but they don't see the path ahead. So some of these people swimming in circles, they're prominent and they're respected, or at least they used to be. They may get annoyed with questions they can't answer. They may not invite people to think for themselves. Life is about progressing in consciousness, and so being stuck, being stagnant is contrary to nature. It's contrary to the nature of being and becoming. And this was me some years ago. I was like, if I hear another sermon about the prodigal son, I'm just going to go, la, la, la. I got over it. This work is a lot of the reason why. How do you make it up the waterfall? Like the salmon, you learn how to fly, at least for brief intervals. We fly by releasing attachment to who we think we are. We fly by releasing the heavy baggage. And what is life like in the waterfall? We're going to distinguish 3 phases. The first phase is chaos. Your life comes apart. You don't know which way is up and which way is down. This could feel like a breakthrough, but most likely it comes with a lot of tears. It may feel like you've been shattered into pieces. You lose whatever you're holding on to as possessions. This could include your job, your marriage, your status, anything and everything that was locked into your personal identity. Often you lose ties to teachers and teachings. You may feel completely alone. It's hard to hold hands with anyone when you're in a waterfall. You may have momentary feelings of exhilaration, like you can break through and fly free and become a new person. But more likely, you're nostalgic for the old ways and the former times, even the ones that weren't working. You look for what is familiar when everything is unfamiliar. The more we fight against the water, the more exhausted we feel. Experienced guides can help. Phase 2 in the waterfall, emotional turmoil. Everything that you've repressed comes up to be dealt with. So everything that you've tried to suppress and avoid comes up to be confronted. This includes blame, shame, guilt, and regret. Anything you've built on a flimsy foundation comes crashing down, and you feel the weight of the loss upon you. It's clear that your old life is gone and you're not getting it back. Maybe you thought life on the spiritual river was all about sunshine and light and ease and grace. It's not. It's not. Sometimes we wrestle with angels, like in the story in Genesis. Bible people? Genesis chapter 32. Jacob wrestles with an angel all night and he's wounded. Jacob is wounded, and in the morning, he receives his blessing. Phase 3, in the waterfall, the dark night of the soul. Now you're deep in the darkness. You're basically broken. You've eliminated all your resources. You've exhausted your resources. You're close to revealing the light that you are. In the dark night of the soul, you stop believing in your beliefs. You become an empty vessel. This momentous occasion is also known as enlightenment. In this phase, you learn not to be afraid of the dark. You learn that the day and the night are equal. You make peace with the dark. And you learn to exist with polarities such as up, down, left, right, good, bad, right, wrong. And here's the key step. When you face the nothing, you face the emptiness, you face the void, you discover being. And from being, worlds emerge, and there's the possibility of everything. You learn about creation. You discover that moment when God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And this is that moment when you realize that your consciousness is eternal. You realize that you still exist. You still exist without things, without cars and shoes and cell phones. You realize that the story of your life is a story, and you get to choose how you speak about it. You realize that you're not limited to your human senses of just what you can see and hear. You may become aware of other senses, consciousness senses. And you begin to understand why you are a human being here now. So when your personal self is shattered, when your identity is broken, here's what you learn. You become aware that since you initially put your life together based on what you learned from your family and your friends and your community and your culture and TikTok and whatever your sources of input are, you learn that you can put yourself back together in new ways. You can put yourself back together consciously. You get to decide what to keep and what to discard. So more of my story. In the early 2000s, I was in a 10-year relationship with a medical doctor. We had a nice 2-story house in the Heights, great group of friends. I produced events, I hosted parties, my picture was in local magazines, I won some awards, I was the guest of honor at a banquet. The relationship ended, I moved out of the house, friends scattered. There was one particular night. I was trying out a new group of friends. One of them had a birthday party down in Galveston, so I went. It's about 11 o'clock. And I'm just feeling disconnected and alone, so I walk out on the beach by myself. Waves are coming in, big moon is rising. 2 big birds fly across the sky silhouetted by the moon. And I just surrendered. I just forgave myself, I forgave everyone. And you have those moments in life where you just bulldoze everything. You just got to get out the bulldozer, clear out the rubbish, clear out all the rubble. And then you're like, what's left? What do I have to build on? Well, I know my mom loves me. Hi, Mom. I know my dad loves me. Thank you, Dad. I've got amazing siblings and wonderful nieces and nephews. That's a good foundation. I kept the job. It wasn't really part of my identity, my career. Most people didn't understand what I did anyway. I worked in information management for Harris County Justice Agencies, which is a real conversation stopper. It's like, how about those Astros? So I met someone who wanted to try out Unity. We came to a Wednesday night live service. I sat in the back row and I cried the whole service. So I started taking classes, became a minister, and here I am. Amen. Here to serve. And I'd like to hear each and every one of your stories. We have small groups for that. So how does this sound so far? You lose your identity, you get completely shattered, you face the void. What's the point? Why bother? Above the waterfall is bliss, joy, clarity, harmony, balance. It's that feeling of being in the flow of life, that feeling of being in the zone. A lot of times we visit that space above the waterfall in those moments of awe and wonder, when you feel like you're outside of time. Maybe you're holding a newborn baby, or you're standing on a mountaintop looking out at a beautiful vista. Maybe you're listening to an amazing symphony. We visit that space with a spiritual journey. What we want to do on the spiritual journey is learn how to live there. How do we get there consciously, not just end up there accidentally because of conditions and situations? How can we make that our way of life and stabilize there? Above the waterfall of being, we learn to locate and reside in stillness. We learn to focus attention and direct energy. We learn to listen to conscience and access divine guidance. We learn to use language effectively, not to tear down ourselves or other people, but to create effectively. And we learn to unfold organically like a flower, instead of being involved in conflict and struggle. As we progress, we gain and accept responsibility, the ability to respond with wisdom and compassion. And the journey is ongoing. There is always more to learn. Your journey is unique to you, and it's also universal. You're not alone, even when it feels like you are. It's necessary to rest and recharge, so when you're tired, find a cozy spot and take care of yourself. When you're prompted to move on, it's effective to go, or the prompting gets more and more intense. You are human and you are divine. As we journey into the fullness of who we are, we find balance, harmony, and the joy of existing. We don't have to progress, But when we do, it feels so good, and it opens possibilities. Let us pray. Let us say yes to being wherever we are right now. Yes to our lives. Yes to being, becoming, and belonging. Grateful for our teachers, our families, our friends, for everything that brought us to this moment. Opening our hearts and minds that we may connect with eternal, infinite abundance. That we may become more of who we came here to be, that we envision a world where everyone is fulfilled and self-actualized, balanced, in harmony, completing our uncompleteness, feeling centered, feeling whole, grateful for all that is. We are love and we are light. And so it is. Amen.
For watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.